Okay, what I lack in books, number of books this week, I definitely make up for in number of pages. Let's get to it. Hi everyone, I'm Sandy and welcome back to my channel. Today I have 1001 book countdown for you. Very excited to have a countdown video. If you're not familiar with 1001 book countdown, I will leave a card up here for you where you can go and check out the original video. But basically I am reading books off of the 1001 books you must read before you die list and slowly making my way through that massive project. I made it more difficult for myself because I combined all editions together, which means I actually have 1,315 books. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of books to read. And I have been working on this or documenting this out here on YouTube for the last few years and really making a lot more progress since I started doing that, which I find incredible. I'm so incredibly thankful for that. So please, if you would, consider giving me a subscribe and sticking around and seeing how far I make it and how long it takes me to get all the way through this massive list of books. But for today, what we will go ahead and do is put up the numbers, which are 840. That's my master number that I have left of the 1001, and 8. Every year at the beginning of the year, I pre-select 52 books with the idea of getting that number down to 0. It helps me feel like I'm making progress. I have not made it to 0 a single year that I've been documenting this out here, but I have hope. I have hope for this year. I don't know though. It's the year is kind of getting away from me. When I look at how many I have left, I'm like, okay, that's quite a few. We will see if I actually make it though. Like I said, I have some hope. But for today, what we will go ahead and do now is jump into the first book, which is North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. Elizabeth Gaskell only has 3 books on the 1001 book countdown, and I have now read 2 of them. This one, North and South, Cranford, and the third one I have not read yet, but it is not Wives and Daughters, which I was shocked by. I would have thought Wives and Daughters would be in there. I believe it's Mary Barton, if I remember correctly, the third book that's on the list. So I'm not sure why Wives and Daughters didn't make it. I've heard a lot of really good things about that particular novel, but no, it's not. So I don't know. This particular book was published between 1854 and 1855. I believe it was originally published in 2 different volumes, and it largely follows a main character whose name is Elizabeth Hale. Elizabeth Hale is living with her family and has to be uprooted from her home and is moved to an industrial town called Milton, mainly because her father has a crisis of conscience and wants to leave what he's currently doing. And her mother does not deal well with that particular move. But Elizabeth really seems to thrive in a lot of ways. She is absolutely out there in the community. She meets some people in the local area. One is a very young girl, I believe, who's, if I remember correctly, his name is Bessie or Bessie. And so she gets to know the community. She also meets some of the factory owners, meaning Mr. Thornton. And Mr. Thornton is kind of a not likable character. Definitely in the beginning, there's a lot of things that he's kind of doing wrong, and Elizabeth kind of gets put into the middle of some of this in a way that is not good for Elizabeth. And Mr. Thornton definitely had some love interest in Elizabeth in the beginning, and Elizabeth did not return that. And she was not happy with him for a wide variety of different reasons, which I actually really loved. Elizabeth is a very interesting character, very well-spoken character, well thought of, it seemed like, in the community. There were people in the community who didn't hesitate calling her out when she didn't do some of the things that she said she was going to do, but I really liked her. And then there's a couple of big twists in here, which I'm not going to talk about. There's something that happens with Elizabeth, her family, that is very cool for Elizabeth, and then the ending, I was like, when I read the ending, I went, what? Really? Are you sure that this is what happened? I had to read it a second time. So the ending alone was really twisty for me. I didn't see it coming based on how things had really progressed throughout the novel. But it does seem like it's more of a book about class and about what you fit financially versus what you have emotionally. Like I said, I really like the character of Elizabeth. I think I ended up giving this around 4 stars. I liked this one considerably more than I liked Cranford, actually. Cranford just seemed like a bunch of old women kind of gossiping, and this actually has a really good story and a nice character arc for Elizabeth. Very much I like this one considerably more. But with this book, we do get to go from 840 to 839. I can't believe I'm in the 830s. Unbelievable. And thankfully it was on my 2023 list. So that number gets to go from 8 down to 7. Unbelievable. So happy. It was kind of, not that chunky of a book. But why did I say I'm making up for page count in this? I have the 7 books left, and for some reason I picked this particular one up. It's the longest book that I had left on my countdown, and it is a chunky book, and I got sucked in. I got sucked into the beginning. So the book is actually Freedom by Jonathan Franzen. Jonathan Franzen only has 2 books on the 1001 book countdown, and I have now read both of them, The Corrections and this one. This book was originally published in 2010. Okay, when I say, and it is, this is not a small book. I read the first chapter and was like, okay, over the first section. It's broken up into multiple parts, and there are a wide variety of different points of view in this. It largely focuses on the Berglund family, which has the mother, Patty, the father, Walter, the son, Joey, the daughter, Jessica, and some other people that are in their lives. You start off with kind of a but a overall view of what's going on with the Berglunds, not told from any of their perspectives. And then you transition into the second section, which is how I got sucked in. Because the second section starts with the autobiography of Patty Berglund, written at the suggestion of her therapist. And for whatever reason, that heading in there just made me go, oh, I want to know more of what's going on with her, want to know why she's writing this or what's in this particular section. It also gave me an idea of, I didn't know how much I could trust Miss Patty in that first section. And she is a fascinating character full of all kinds of flaws, lots and lots of flaws, and not just with her husband, but she had a very difficult upbringing. It goes through her childhood. It goes through the competitiveness she has with her sisters. It goes through her as a basketball star. Some very bad stuff happens to her as a teenager, not good, and her parents did not handle it in a way that really helped Patty recover very well. So she was emotionally and physically just traumatized by these things that happened to her as a young adult, and then going in, it just impacted her entire life. And I loved that because she was in a lot of ways despicable, a lot of ways relatable, and she really had a lot of issues. And her, in that way that was written, like I said, it felt a lot like I couldn't believe what she was saying. Awesome, amazing, loving it. The first two sections. And then we go to the next section, which is a family friend, Walter's best friend, and it slowly started to go downhill. And then it hit Joey's perspective, which is the young son. And I believe in that particular section, he was a teenager, 16, 17, 18, maybe, very, very young, very impetuous young man, doesn't want to live with his parents anymore, goes and lives with a neighbor where his girlfriend is at. And, I don't want to be in the head of a teenage boy with all of the sex fantasies that he has with his young girlfriend. I just don't want to. And it was yucky in a lot of ways, and it just was taken to a level that I felt like was extreme, and it put me off of the book pretty in a pretty big way, to the point where I was like, maybe I should just stop reading it. Okay, I didn't stop reading it because I was hoping maybe we would flip back to the Patty narrative again, but it flips into Walter. I can't remember, did it flip into Jessica? I can't remember if it did. If it did flip into Jessica, I don't recall that, which is her daughter. And then it flips between kind of those people for quite a while, but we don't get back to Patty until the very, very end of the book. And she definitely was still one of my favorite characters at the end of the book. I didn't like how other people necessarily saw her, or how she came across from other perspectives, which is really interesting, but I loved her voice. But overall, there's just too much of the other. Walter, the husband, and his kind of piece, I didn't love his as well. I didn't like his story. Richard Katz, who's the family friend, his story as well was just kind of like, okay, come on, move on. Joey in particularly though, was the one that I just couldn't do it. Oh man, I just could not read about Joey anymore and his sex calls with his girlfriend. And I mean, it's just not what I wanted to be reading. So I rated this about a 2.5 star, and I feel like that's being a little bit generous for me because there was so much more of it that I didn't like compared to the small amount that I loved in this particular book. But ultimately, especially after those first two sections, I ended up being somewhat disappointed by that. There is a point to this bird on the front, by the way, which is in the very end of the book as well. But yeah, it just unfortunately didn't work as well as I wanted it to. But with this book, what we get to do is go from 839 to 838, and it was on my 2023 list, so this number gets to go from 7 down to 6. I don't know, 6 still seems like a lot, but like I said, look at this book, look at the page count in this book. This is 550 pages. I'm thrilled that this large of a book is down off of my countdown for the year. Ooh, it was probably the book I was also looking forward to the least out of the ones I had left. So yeah, so what's coming next? I have this one, La Reine Margot by Alexandre Dumas. I actually have started reading this. You can see there is a bookmark in here. I'm only about at page 15. There's a lot of names in this that are hard to pronounce for me, so I have the audiobook that I have been also listening to help me try and get into it a little bit more, but I have started this one. And then the other one that I'm targeting next is going to be Money by Martin Amis. I think the reason why I'm wanting to pick up this one is because it is relatively short, and I have in my head maybe I can get these two done by the end of the month, which is silly. I shouldn't even try that, and go into December with only 4 books left. I don't know if that's going to work, everyone. I don't know. So, but that is the end of my update. Have you read either of these books, North and South or Freedom? Are you surprised that Wives and Daughters is not on the 1001 list? Because I definitely was surprised. Have you read this book by Alexandre Dumas? It's a newer one for me that I have never heard of before. Please leave me a comment down below. I would love to hear from you. But as always, like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, everyone, thanks. Bye.